All right, we are on the hour. And I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is David Shanknecht. I'm hosting this webinar, but the primary presenter for this particular Journey to Adulthood webinar, this inaugural Journey to Adulthood webinar, is Wendy Claire Berry, editor and formation specialist at Church Publishing Incorporated. Wendy, and if you're on the line here, can you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to J2A?
Absolutely. Thanks, David. So I have been, prior to coming to Church Publishing, I was in children, youth, and family ministry in the Episcopal Church for more than 30 years. And I am someone who has both led a Journey to Adulthood program at the parish level and taught Right 13 back in the early 2000s. So I was thrilled to be the editor for this project along with the team from St. Philip's in Durham, North Carolina, the church that developed this curriculum. And I am really excited to dive in and talk about it.
Well, Wendy, if I may, I'm going to launch a poll here so we can find out what the familiarity is with the J2A curricula. And so hopefully you are seeing something in front of you right now, a question: how familiar are you with J2A? Well, we've got some people popping in here, and we'll give it just a few more seconds to let you respond before we close the poll. And I don't know if our panelists can see the results or not. I don't often see some things from the panelist side, but I'll let you all know that 14% of you have used all three modules often. 22% have used Right 13, 24% have used J2A, 5% have used YAC, now YAC, now Forward, and 60% of you are brand new to the J2A curricula. Wendy, that's 61% now are brand new to the J2A curricula. And so we're really pleased to be able to introduce that to you. So I'm going to close the polling pod here, and then I'm going to proceed with your introductory slides, Wendy.
Excellent, thanks. So Journey to Adulthood is a youth ministry program of spiritual formation for 6th through 12th grades. It is centered on inclusive relational ministry, and it uses Bible study, spiritual practices, service to the church and the community, and rites of passage at all three levels. It's creative, it's developmentally appropriate, and the lessons are arranged within three categories of self, society, and spirituality, which correspond to the biblical call to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. There are 3 two-year segments included in the program. We call them cohorts. Right 13 is usually 11 to 13-year-olds. Journey to Adulthood is usually 13 to 15-year-olds. And Forward is for 15 to 18-year-olds. The program is aimed at liturgical churches, churches that use the Nicene and Apostles' creeds, and churches that embrace spiritual practices and faith in action. Historically, it's been used by Episcopal churches, as well as Presbyterian, Lutheran, American Baptist, and Roman Catholic churches. People have used it because it's comprehensive, it's developmentally appropriate, it's theologically robust, and it's highly adaptable. Right 13 is a 2-year cohort for ages 11 to 13, thereabouts. It uses serious and fun activities, reflection, and discussion. It creates a safe haven to explore new ideas, new interests, and new abilities. It introduces Bible study, prayer practices, and service projects. And it famously includes the Right 13 ceremony, which is fully inclusive of all gender identities. J2A the middle segment, is a 2-year cohort for ages 13 to 15. It helps youth develop critical thinking and take on increased responsibility. It fosters the creation and understanding of Christian community, and it introduces new modes of engaging with scripture and prayer. And usually in the second year, it culminates in the pilgrimage experience. Forward is replacing what was formerly known as YAC, Young Adults in the Church. It's a 2-year mentor-based cohort for ages 15 to 18. It has an emphasis on discernment, vocation, and the development of a personal credo. It includes robust and open-ended Bible studies. It has a focus on greater responsibilities in service to the church and the community. And it concludes with the Forward liturgy at the end of the 2-year program. So, as much as any curriculum can be everything a youth program needs, Journey to Adulthood, I think, is it. It is comprehensive. It actively engages youth in the full life of the congregation. And it's easily arranged around the events of the liturgical year, and there are suggestions for that in the lessons. So in each lesson, there are talking points and activities that can be combined in various ways given the needs of your group, as well as the sequence of the lessons you select. Each lesson generally is expected to last 2 to 3 sessions, and each lesson is clear about what the scope and sequence is especially clear about what that could look like. The activities include a time estimate aiming for about 45 minutes, and each activity is arranged into 3 stages: prep, engage, and reflect. Prep allows leaders to anticipate needs, everything from gathering supplies for an arts and crafts activity to reaching out to clergy or community members for input on a weighty topic, to planning an off-site visit. Engage outlines the core of the activity after your group's established gathering routine, whatever that might be. Reflect provides conversation and questions for wrapping up the experience and the learning of the activity, which ends in a closing prayer, usually adapted from the Book of Common Prayer. And I say adapted because we've made a real effort for most of the prayers to be inclusive language. So the overarching shape of the curriculum is that the first year provides a foundation that the second year builds upon. Of the 3 programs, Right 13 is the most sequential by its design and because of the developmental needs of middle school kids. Journey to Adulthood, J2A, and Right and Forward provide more flexibility depending on the needs and interests of your group. There are suggestions about which lessons and units fit well within the liturgical year and which lessons should precede other lessons that are found in the scope and sequence and in the lessons themselves. There is an introduction for leaders, as well as a leader's guide for each of the 3 levels. Leaders should read those first, and then read the lesson. We're going to look at lessons in a little bit, but each lesson begins with briefly stated goals and background information. There are talking points and activities, usually 2 activities, A and B, that round out the lessons. As I mentioned before, one lesson is generally intended to cover 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the length of each session. So if you're meeting on a Sunday afternoon or a weeknight in the evening, you'll have more time than those people who are trying to have a 45-minute session between the services. And this is flexible and will allow you to do that.
Wendy, I'm going to pause for a little bit, if it's okay, to take a look at some of the things that we're seeing in the Q&A area.
Great.
And if you have an opportunity to respond to these, fabulous. If not, maybe we can get back to these folks a little bit later.
Absolutely.
Wanda is asking about old materials, especially clip art, and if that's going to be available in any way.
By clip art, are you thinking the actual what we're showing on the slide now for Right 13, Journey to Adulthood and Forward? Because yes, those are absolutely available to be used.
I'm going to ask a couple of more questions here, and hopefully you can help us out with these. Jacqueline is asking, I'm wondering if you have suggestions for integrating these are our bodies with this.
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, and we can absolutely talk offline about that. That is one of the elements that has changed significantly, and later we'll talk about changes to the curriculum. But if you used this program before, you know that there were actually 4 pieces to the curriculum: self, spirituality, and society, and the 4th was sexuality. And that's, even though there are still lessons in Journey to Adulthood, J2A, the middle segment, about sexuality and gender and consent, brand new lessons written by the author, one of the authors of These Are Our Bodies. One of the reasons that was taken out as a category of lesson is because the Episcopal Church now has this fabulous, robust, really theologically grounded curriculum for sex education that goes from preschool all the way to young adults. These Are Our Bodies. So please do email me and we will talk about that. And David, I wonder if you can drop my email into the chat, wbarrie, B-A-R-R-I-E, at cpg.org. It's a great idea, and we actually mentioned that in one of the leaders' guides, maybe the general information for leaders, or the, oh, I know what it's in. It's in the What's New in Journey to Adulthood. We talk about that curriculum.
wbarrie at cpg.org.
Yes.
Correct? All right, I'm sending it to the entire audience. Fabulous.
Thank you.
All right. How do you start the program in a parish that hasn't done it? Do I just start with Right 13?
That's certainly one way to do it. That's a great question, and that's certainly one way to do it. And then, build each year, add a new segment when you've completed Right 13, and there'll be a new group ready to go. Another way, because you will have access to all 3 levels, is to pick and choose among them for the ages that your parish has to begin with. You can do a grand rollout and talk about Journey to Adulthood, and a lot of parishes have done that in the past, but you can also very gently introduce these lessons without a lot of fanfare. And when you get critical mass, you can say, so we've been using Journey to Adulthood, which is this great program. So there are a variety of ways to introduce it, and I'm also happy to talk more offline about that.
Lauren is asking a little bit about those key movements: prep, engage, reflect. Is that the kind of what the teachers are seeing and are moving through, or is that what the students' experience is?
Yes, so the lessons are for the most part seen only by the leaders, the people who are teaching. There are handouts for some lessons that specify a copy is needed for each member of the group. There are actually, we're going to look at that in a little bit, as you know, David, when you show us the website. But this is actually one of the new features, is that the lessons are standardized. They all have these elements for the most part, with the exception of some material in Forward and, so the Right 13 ceremony, for example. But for the most part, all the lessons follow the same format, and the kids will get used to this flow, even if it isn't right in front of them. They don't need to know the names of these various prep, engage, reflect, but it is how each lesson flows.
Great. And Tabitha's asking, how do you build in confirmation?
So there is very soon, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have it'll be available free if you need it by emailing me, but it will also be available in the extra material, and you can show us that when we're on the site, David. There's a whole little a couple of pages about journey to adulthood and confirmation. It's easy to do, but we didn't want to be too specific about it, too overt about it in the program itself, because there's just such a great variety of how and when people do confirmation. If you have a time in the year where confirmation happens each year, I mean, some churches do, some churches don't. The church where I was last on staff always had confirmation on Pentecost for many years. So it was really easy to build that in the course of a program year. Some churches, of course, want to be very specific with the material that they're offering. You will find some of that built into the lessons here. There's a lesson on the liturgical year. But there isn't a lesson, for example, on the polity of the Episcopal Church, and that's something you would, Episcopalians feel strongly about including in confirmation. And so you'd want to draw on other material, and we actually provide some websites and suggestions for you to find that additional material in this document called Confirmation and Journey to Adulthood that has been written, has been edited. I just got back from taking my son to college, so I need to proof it before it gets uploaded to the site. It'll be available very shortly.
Fabulous. Well, we do have a few more questions, but I think a number of these we can respond to later. So why don't we keep on moving, because we definitely want to give people the experience of the new Journey to Adulthood website, the platform. We're going to go live onto the platform so you can get a feel for that environment and how it works. And then we'll return back to Wendy to wrap it up, talk about some things that are new, and to respond to a few more questions. Is that okay, Wendy?
That sounds great, David.
Hopefully you are seeing something different. If you are, then we're good. That means I was able to move my live window before your eyes. It feels like magic sometimes, doesn't it? So you hopefully are seeing kind of the entry portal to Journey to Adulthood. And we are indeed live. This entry portal is pretty easy to get to, j2a.rightformation.com. This home screen will give you a quick little overview of Journey to Adulthood. It'll give you the opportunity to sign in if you are subscribers, to get a 14-day free trial. And if you haven't gotten a free trial, now's the time to do it, really, because you've just been introduced to the resources in their current iteration. You're about to go live onto the website to poke around a bit. And so this would be a great opportunity to get the free trial and explore J2A yourselves. Or if you're just ready to do it, you can subscribe now via the subscribe now button. Since I am a subscriber, I am signing in. There we are. So there are the 3 tiles of curriculum that are in J2A. Right 13, Journey to Adulthood, and Forward. Under each curriculum, there are a couple of functions. The quick look button, which would allow you to take a peek into what Right 13 is and to download the scope and sequence of Right 13. So you can download that immediately. A little warning about free trials. We encourage you to use your limited downloads for lessons rather than scope and sequence. Wendy, I believe that you're going to be making the scope and sequence for each of these available on the J2A site.
Right now they're free on the church publishing site because we couldn't figure out how to make them free on your site.
Okay, great.
And I can send it as one document to anyone who emails me. I can send actually all 6 years of the scope and sequence. But right now that's available on our website, churchpublishing.org.
Fabulous. And each of these also have an explore button. The explore button allows you to actually dig into the units of each of the modules, in this case, Write 13. Let's leave this for a little bit. If you're ever lost, by the way, on the site, you can always click Journey to Adulthood and go back to the main page. Those Journey to Adulthood words are active in the sense of they bring you back to the main page. So some of the functionality that I will be guiding you through is the planner, which will be allowing you to design specific plans and using those materials at certain times and at certain days at your own church's convenience according to its schedule. The calendar is a useful tool, as you'll soon see, because it allows you to let your leaders know that there are lessons that are scheduled for certain days, and you can actually tag leaders to those days. I'll be doing that here in a little bit. Help is always useful as you look for opportunities to get a little more information, including pricing and more about some webinars to support you. So always check the help area because we populate that with lots of useful information. And then the contact button allows you to let us know what's going on with your subscription to J2A, and if you've got any things that you would like to share with us or some needs that you might have. I especially, however, want to go all the way to the right to the My Account button. This button is very useful in the sense that it allows you to add leaders to your J2A account. If you've got various people that are using J2A and you want to assign them lessons, you can do that, as I'll show you here in a little bit. But here under My Account, this is where you add new leaders. And first name, last name, email, maybe a generic password so they're everybody's not scrambling to remember what their passwords are. You can keep it pretty simple. But you can add as many directors and leaders as you so choose in J2A. The difference being a director can actually set up a plan, can move content to the calendar, can assign content to leaders. Leaders can get to the calendar and download the content that's assigned to them, but they can't really create a schedule, a program for that content. Subscription here under your My Account area lets you know what your subscription status is, your subscription number, et cetera, et cetera. And downloads. Now, downloads is very familiar, very useful rather. Downloads will actually allow you to see who's downloading what content. So you'll be able to see if your leaders are receiving the content that they need to do any given lesson. So some very useful things in the My Account area. I'm going to go back now to the home page by clicking Journey to Adulthood. And I'm actually going to manipulate this content a little bit here. Let's go into Unit 1 of Write 13. As we explore Unit 1, you'll see 3 lessons on spirituality, society, and self: loving God, loving neighbor, and loving self. You can immediately download all of this, all right? Download selected, boom, it appears right into your tray. Or you can choose a single lesson to download, which I'm going to do now here, and I'm going to download that lesson. All right. You can, and we'll be looking here at the lesson. Wendy will be walking us through this lesson here in a little bit. So we're not going to leave this lesson in the tray by itself here. We'll revisit here in a moment. If you're curious to learn more about these lessons, you can click into them by way of this arrow. You can determine what kind of document it is. You can get a quick preview of the lesson, or again, you can download or add it to the calendar. So for example, if I want to use this lesson on a particular day, let's say that the 29th, add to calendar. So let's take a look at the calendar then. And there on the 29th is the lesson. Notice that this area here, leaders, is blank. You can use the pencil tool and you can assign, Wendy, I'm just going to assign this to you. You sound pretty
That makes
experienced.
sense.
You sound pretty experienced. You should be able to handle this lesson, I think. So anyway, this is one of the things you can certainly do, is involve your leaders and they can get to the resources that they need in a journey to adulthood. Because you might be doing some training too, it's always good to not just check out the lessons in Journey to Adulthood, but some of these other resources, other lessons that you might want to use that aren't part of the core curriculum. And it's really important to note, and here's example where the Rite 13 ceremony and lesson happens to be, but it's really important to note that these areas are kind of wild card areas for the developers too, to add extra content, perhaps seasonal content or content related to specific things that are going on in the world, specific needs.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Wendy.
In Journey to Adulthood, there are 3 new lessons that we will probably add as extras to both Rite 13 and Forward, because they're lessons of lament, and we'll talk about that later. But in the event of a tragedy, God forbid, at your church, these lessons are really adaptable and should be used by anyone. So I want to make sure that those are available to everyone. So these are spots where we will be continually providing new content, both those 2 buttons of extras, and we'll make sure that the confirmation document is in this particular spot, extras, for everyone, because some churches confirm in middle school, some churches confirm early in the high school years, some churches confirm at the end of high school or quite a bit later. So that's where you'll find extra information that'll be helpful in planning your program.
Well, and that reminds me to go up a level, I suppose, in your planning by way of the planner. So if you have a confirmation, for example, planned for a particular time, let's plan confirmation for, let's say, January 10th through, I don't know when Ash Wednesday is this year, but we'll go through the 27th. You've created an area, and maybe you do your confirmation on Wednesday. You've created a space now where you can populate specific lessons. And so you can choose the modules you want to use, and which specific units you want to use, and then you can add them, populate them, so that when you go to the calendar over that period of time, you will see these additions. I'm going to really want to respond to some of the questions that I'm seeing here, because there's quite a few that have popped in since we've started this demonstration.
Do we want to do that before looking at the lesson?
Yeah, let's look at the lesson first. Great thought. So I have now opened this up, and you can scroll me through it, Wendy.
Great. So this is how a lesson appears. You'll see on the left column, there's the emblem for Rite 13, so you know at a glance which level you're looking at, and the emblem for spirituality, so you know this is a spirituality lesson, and a place for notes on the first couple of pages. The goals are up front, and then background, which is background for the leaders, not necessarily something to share with the youth, but to introduce what this lesson is about. Online options are provided for every lesson. And you'll see right here, I want to point this out, BCP is shorthand for the Book of Common Prayer, and usually the first time we use it in the actual text of a lesson, it's spelled out, but every other time it appears as Book of Common Prayer. Episcopalians know what this is. For anyone of another denomination, just know that's when you substitute your own liturgical resources, whatever book you use for worship. Then next come the talking points, and it's clear what questions are for the kids. And some suggestions. And now here's the first activity. This activity is expected to take about 30 minutes. Prep tells you what you need. You need Bibles, and dividing into small groups. And then Engage lays out the steps of the lesson. What are you going to do first? You're asking the youth to look up something in the Bible. You're going to give them a little bit of background. You're going to have them read the passage. You're going to explain what the Shema is. There's a bullet point to ask a question of the youth. The biblical passages are usually from the New Revised Standard Version, sometimes from the Message, very occasionally from the Common English Bible. And the Bible passages are always italicized. And then there are discussion questions. And then you'll move to the reflection. And so this right up front, it's encouraging you not to be afraid of silence. And there's a closing prayer. And it tells you where to find it if you want to see the actual prayer in the Book of Common Prayer, or if you want to use traditional language, you can use the prayer from there. So that's a sample lesson. Can you keep scrolling, David? There's more to follow this. There's another activity. You can scroll pretty quickly through that. This one actually has more material for prep. But not much more. And this is asking kids to use the resource that we've given them, in this case, the Book of Common Prayer, to inspire them to craft a prayer themselves. Reflection, which is short, a different closing prayer. And there's a third activity here, which is perhaps a longer one. And this one is one that you will want to know the leaders anticipate in advance. So it's a good thing to read through the entire lesson, even if you're going to just use a part of it one week. Know what's coming ahead. Great. This is an inclusive language adaptation of the 23rd Psalm as the closing prayer. You can keep scrolling, David, because after the third, in Rite 13, not for every lesson, but for most lessons, and maybe even in some Journey to Adulthood lessons, there's something, can you go back? Called feeding formation. And that's anticipating that you may have a snack time or a meal as part of your gathering. And whether it's at the beginning before your actual class takes place, this actually has an activity that could, if you don't have this, you might build it into your lesson at the beginning, certainly anyway. And this one actually has a handout as part of it. Not all feeding formation includes steps like this for prep, engage, and reflect. Some of them do. This one does. But it's inviting the kids to craft their own mealtime blessing. And the feeding formation takes different, looks different with each lesson, but it's keyed to the lesson. And can you scroll down, David? Thank you. I think the next thing that's coming is the actual the sample blessings. So everyone's going to get at least a couple of these meal blessings to look at, and then they're going to write their own or offer one of their own that they know from camp or from home. And it's, they serve as an icebreaker, a way to get conversations started, a way to include this time of eating together as a time of formation. So that's what's in a lesson, and the feeding formation is particular to Rite 13. So if you have this, since you have access to all three levels, and if you're starting J2A with a meal every Wednesday evening, or with donuts on a Sunday morning, you might want to take a look at the feeding formation in Rite 13. Thank you.
Great, 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 great. Well, I am going to move into a little bit of Q&A here before we get into talking about what else is new. If we still have previous materials we want to ask, do we have any right to use that, or is it considered obsolete?
It's considered obsolete at this point. It isn't a question of rights so much as everything's been revised, and there are things that have been rewritten fairly substantially over the last. This has been a process of several years on the part of both St. Philip's and from the beginning of this year on my part as well.
Here's a question from Jennifer. If the youth group is small, do the three different groups lend themselves into a very small group, or should they be combined? Should be combined?
If you have a small group, I would encourage you to combine them. It's harder as you get older, as I'm sure you know, but certainly you could easily pick and choose among the lessons. And if you had some high school kids as well as some young Rite 13 kids, it would be easy to find material in forward that corresponds to a theme in Rite 13, and you could provide a little bit of extra content for your older kids that way.
Related, I suppose, Denise is asking, how can small churches use this curriculum? Small number of teens, varied ages.
So interestingly enough, I don't think that in its previous incarnation, this program was particularly easy to use for small churches, but I think in this new updated version, it really is. First of all, it's a sliding scale, so we make it very affordable for small churches. Secondly, you do have access to every level, and you can choose what's most appropriate based on the ages and interests of your kids. For instance, if you wanted to start everyone off in the fall focusing on creation, you can look at the creation lessons at all three levels and see, what will work best, what elements can I take from this for our older kids? What find the happy medium. A lot of Journey to Adulthood is easily adapted for younger or older. I think it's a little harder to make forward work for, say, Rite 13 kids. That's not its intent. It really is building, but if you're just beginning a youth program, there's actually going to be a lot in Rite 13 that you'll find very useful no matter the age of your kids. So it is, I think the only hardship for a small church is sort of the overwhelmingness of the materials, and I hope we've made that much easier because you have a pretty clear scope and sequence for every level. and you can decide what it is you're going to focus on for a given period of time, and then choose among them. I also think having the program online as opposed to I started using this program when it came in a very large plastic crate, thousands of pages. This is much clearer, much better organized, and I don't anticipate you really having to struggle to put together a program. I think it'll be really clear, and I'm happy to help.
Yeah, Wendy, related to that, Hunter is wondering, given the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you think this curriculum can be adapted to hybrid or virtual learning needs?
Well, we anticipated that, and that's why there are suggestions in every lesson about what works well online and where you'll have to adapt. And some lessons, if there's an activity that doesn't work well online, we say that. You can even do pilgrimage planning and mission trip planning online, even if the ultimate trip needs to wait until you're able. But frankly, people have been finding really wonderful ways to be of service in their community and in their churches during this time. And I have learned a lot about what a service project looks like when everyone's at home. And so I even have suggestions for that I'm happy to make.
Well, I have to say, Wendy, that Allison has been involved in J2A for 21 years, and that this update excites her.
That's great to hear.
We're excited about that. Volunteer lay teachers, do you feel that they're well supported by J2A?
I feel they're very well supported, very well supported. Particularly if someone is doing the work of just choosing among the lessons, as long as they're reading and as long as they have someone to speak to if they have any questions, this is really, the lessons themselves contain a lot more information than they may need in a class to really thoroughly prepare them. And the leaders' guides make it clear that we never expect volunteers and frankly even staff to have all the answers. One of the reasons this is called Journey to Adulthood is because the journey is just so important. And we really want to invite kids into a relationship with God, with Jesus. It is not about facts and answers. It is about the journey and coming close to God and coming with all your hard questions. There's a lesson on doubt at each level that really helps teenagers become comfortable with the idea that this faith journey is one that lasts a lifetime, and the answers that work for us now are going to change and evolve, and it will happen during the course of this program, but it happens during the course of our lives. And so the greatest gift that any leader can give kids of any age is sharing their own faith journey. And so that's really built into this program, and it's just profoundly important. We have decades of research now that shows what leads to an adult faith. And ultimately, it really isn't about a curriculum. It isn't about youth group. It really is about parents first and foremost. And then it's about participation in worship and connection to other adults in the faith community. And so this program, because of the way it builds relationships with youth and with the volunteer leaders, I think is just transformational.
Wendy, I think what we'll do now, because we're already at 10 minutes before the hour, we really want to be respectful of people's time. We thank them for the hour that they've given us, but I want to be respectful of your time, Wendy, and allow you to continue to speak about what else is new. If we have some more time at the end, then perhaps we can loop back to some more questions. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Yep.
Journey to Adulthood was developed by St. Philip's Episcopal Church in Durham, North Carolina, and first published in the mid-1990s. After more than 2 decades of use, St. Philip's asked a team of clergy, youth ministers, and academics with experience in youth faith formation to revise the curriculum with input from congregations around the country about what changes were needed. The revisions and updates reflect both current thinking in formation and theology in how best to serve young people and the church in the 21st century. This new edition is grounded in the Nicene and Apostles' creeds at all 3 levels. There's a sustained focus on the reading and study of Scripture. There is inclusive and expansive language for God. There is revised language, and activities have been revised, reflecting new understandings of mission, privilege, marginalization, and gender. Rite 13 has been refreshed and reorganized for clarity and coherence and ordered to scaffold the learnings from week to week. The revised Rite 13 ceremony is fully inclusive of LGBTQ plus kids as the focus shifts from gender identity toward the journey from adolescence to adulthood. J2A has undergone significant revision. The lessons on God and the persons of the Trinity are new, as are 2 of the Bible lessons. There are also new lessons on identity, including race, gender, sexuality, and consent. The language in earlier lessons on privilege and marginalization have been revised. And there are 3 lessons of lament, 1 for tragedy, 1 for crisis, and 1 for catastrophe. And as I mentioned, those lessons can easily be modified for Rite 13 and forward, should the unfortunate need arise, and we will add those to the extras in the next week or so. And forward was previously known as YAC, Young Adults in the Church. This segment has been completely reimagined. The new forward provides substantially more class material. If you used YAC before, you know that it was actually designed as a framework for a curriculum rather than that you would create yourself rather than having content provided. So this is we're providing actual content for you. A third of the curriculum follows an identical format to Rite 13 and J2A. Another third of the curriculum is designed for mentor participation with a description of the many ways that can happen. It could happen, with certain lessons. It could happen that the mentors are only present at a retreat, or for a mission trip. The last third is, there are several models mentioned for mentor participation, so it doesn't have to look one way. The last third of the curriculum is comprised of 4 complete Bible studies on the book of Mark, the letter to the Colossians, the letter of James, and 1 John. The lesson materials for these studies is intentionally open-ended. There's just a lot more content than you will need for those Bible studies. They're very thorough. And there's actually a guide to the Bible studies that's you would read first, so you would know how, what's in each Bible study. So that's what's new, and we can certainly take more questions.
Well, Elliot says, thanks for all of this. It's exciting. The one question that Elliot has is thinking that this new iteration provides 6 years of content, 3 2-year cycles. They say they serve, oops, sorry about that, 6th through 12th graders, which is 7 years of the program. And Elliot's wondering if he has his wires crossed in terms of scope and sequence.
No, it's just that it is 6 years. What we know from our experience is that there is more content in any year than you will ever use, and our experience also with high school kids is that they are less available on a weekly basis than the younger kids. So the material can easily span more time. We'll also be adding additional content each year. St. Philip's and Church Publishing have committed to yearly revisions and providing new material based on what people are requesting and what's going on in the world. So I don't think there will be any problem in building this up. I think there's more material than you will possibly get through, but I think we've made it easier to be able to get through it.
Catherine is wondering if some of the lessons or maybe activities within lessons even could be used during UIC, during Sunday school. Is it something that can be adapted in those kind of ways, Wendy?
Absolutely, yes. It is written with the idea that most people are using it on a Sunday morning during the formation hour, but we know that other churches have a weekly program that meets on Sundays or during the week, and have meet for a much longer period of time, and that's so in that case a lesson that's meant to last over a 3-week period, could be used for many more hours in a shorter period of time. And when there's a lesson that we think works particularly well during a retreat, and there are several lessons, like all the lessons that lead to pilgrimage are meant to be used over a period of time. The first pilgrimage lesson gets introduced in the first year, but the other 3 lessons get introduced on the pilgrimage. And then, of course, there's all kinds of information to support the pilgrimage, which is can be a very short trip or an extensive trip of even a couple of weeks overseas for some churches. The same is true for the urban rural adventure, which is meant to span a weekend. There are several service projects that take place over longer periods of time. And I anticipate that will be something that, we continually add materials for as requested or needed.
Elliot has some questions about the tactics of using the website. And if you don't mind, Wendy, I think I could respond to some of these.
Absolutely.
Sharing content, yes, you can select download all for the various units, and you will get all that content delivered into the tray. It might be a zip file if there's a lot of it, rather than individual PDFs. We have the functionality in the website to compress files if they're really, really big. But you can certainly download it and just print it and distribute it by hand, or send them, attach the various lessons to emails, or you could send your leaders right to the calendar to get their lessons. Attach the lessons to days in the calendar and encourage your leaders to get the content that way.
I think the reality for most churches these days is that leaders can sign on for particular commitment and not everything else. I would want all leaders involved in the Rite 13 ceremony. I think that's important. But no, I think there's a lot of flexibility built in here.
Is there a limit to how many leaders and teachers can be assigned to the website? And that answer is no, there's not. People are wondering about pricing, and I know we're getting close to the hour. Wendy, you have a sliding scale based on the number of participants.
Average Sunday attendance.
Average Sunday attendance, right?
The church, right?
And it is a subscription-based program, so it's an annual subscription.
Yes. And so, we this is set up so that you're automatically billed for the next year unless you tell us you've stopped using it, and we're going to take you at your word that you've stopped using it. But yes, and we will be adding the year 2 content at some point early next year is my anticipation. I will know more about that next month. The year 2 content has all been written and edited. It's just in the production process, and will be uploaded when it's with plenty of planning time.
Well, and I think that's the beautiful thing about having it on the platform, correct, Wendy? It's the opportunity then to allow that to live in a very flexible space, that content, and always having then the opportunity to refresh and renew and to add new content of a variety of kinds. There's a question about, do we want to do this for even younger children? make content available.
So, the St. Philip's uses, let's see, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd for younger children. This was really developed to follow along, to help children who've been particularly in a godly play program and had the gift of being able to ask a lot of open-ended questions about God and about Scripture and about the sacraments. So really, I think in a perfect world, you'll all be using Godly Player or Catechesis of the Good Shepherd for your younger children. And to move into this, we're actually going to develop lessons that help bridge kids who've been in Godly Play or Catechesis to Rite 13. That's on the list for next year. Yeah, I mean, I think we're excited to see what other Rite formation material that we ultimately develop or someone develops and we publish in this form. So I'll be interested to see if any other churches out there have something that they would like to develop for younger children.
A very organic and useful way to supply content for sure. Wendy, we have bumped up to the hour, and there's many more questions. I think what I'll do is I'll download the questions and provide them to you so that you have the opportunity to see who's asking the questions and how to respond to them as you so choose. But out of respect for our participants, and a few of them have left already, do we want to wind this up a little bit here?
That's fine. I am happy to take questions at any time. You can email me and we can talk on the phone. I'm committed to helping you figure this out. So.
And the easiest way, I think, to find all the information about J2A, with the exception of the scope and sequence, is to go to the Journey to the Adulthood site. You can actually scan that with your phone, that QR code, and it'll take you right there. We also, in partnership with Augsburg Fortress, have got a page there that will house, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Wendy, the on-demand version of this webinar, so that people can use it in their teacher training and
right.
other purpose or for other things in their congregations. You want to say anything more about that?
We'll have a second webinar right after Labor Day. I think the week after Labor Day. It's already been scheduled. And then, we'll do more webinars as needed, and they can be, the beauty of the fact that they're recorded is that we can get specific in a webinar. So, if what people are really interested in are particular practical matters, we can address that.
And I would say that many of the questions that you have here could drive the development of that next webinar as well, Wendy.
Yes.
Very much encourage you to get the free trial now that you've experienced a little bit about the site, and to feel for what that environment is like. And do you have any closing words for the participants, Wendy?
Only that I'm thrilled that you were here, and I'm really proud of having been a part of this, and I am really happy to answer your questions and to chat more with you about what I think is a really fantastic program.